Since UTV's health reporter Deborah McAleese broke the story of a controversial inspection report into bullying and mismanagement in the cardiac surgery department in the Royal Victoria Hospital at the Belfast Trust, the floodgates opened for both staff and patients to speak out about their own often negative experiences. In fact, the reaction was so strong to Deborah's reporting that the Health Minister Mike Nesbitt put the Trust under what he called exceptional measures to help it get back on track. But will it be enough? Welcome to the UTV Vodcast. I'm Carol Jordan. I'm joined today by our health reporter Deborah McAleese, who has spent the last few months investigating the concerns about the culture of the Belfast Trust. Thanks for joining me, Debs. So, firstly, how did you first stumble across this story?
Well, I first became aware, Carol, back in February when I was contacted by someone working within the Trust who told me that there were issues within the cardiac surgery unit and that 4 surgeons had decided to work from home. It seems to have been some sort of personnel dispute between some of the senior staff there, and that inspectors were actually on site. But what actually came out in that report, I couldn't have expected. I didn't expect just how bad it actually was. You know, people within the Trust were telling me around that February and March time that it was a difficult working environment. Staff were very unhappy. They had a lot of concerns. Their concerns weren't being addressed. And then this report came out and really just, it was staggering what was actually found to have been happening within that department.
Now, all credit to you, that report didn't actually come out, did it? You actually obtained exclusively a copy of that report. What were the main sort of points that stuck with you from that?
I think it was the very difficult working environment that a lot of members of staff within that unit were having to work in. There are wonderful members of staff in there. Some people I have been speaking to who throughout February and March were very concerned about what was happening. They were very worried about the patients. They were unhappy that some operations were having to be cancelled, sometimes at the last minute, because they couldn't get in contact with some of the surgeons who were working from home. But it was a whole litany of things like, bullying of some staff members by senior members of staff. Instruments were apparently being thrown about within the operating theatre. One member of staff told inspectors that they were concerned that this dispute between some of the senior members of staff could actually become violent. It just sounded like such a difficult place to work within. And of course, since you reported on that, and it's been, almost 3 weeks now, it's really been the catalyst for other people coming forward to you. So what else have you been hearing from both patients and clinicians who've come to talk to you and speak out? It really has. I can't believe how many people have actually started to come forward to share their stories. Most of them at the moment have remained anonymous, which goes to show that there is still a lot of fear about speaking up, even though Mike Nesbitt has said several times over the past few weeks that he wants whistleblowers to be protected. He wants to hear for people to come forward, to hear what the culture is like in other departments, not just in Belfast Trust, but maybe if there's concerns in any of the other trusts. But because so many people are remaining anonymous at the moment, it really shows that there is still a problem. Now, I spoke to one patient who contacted me. Whenever she had seen our reporting, she wanted to tell us about her experience. Now, this was in a completely different department. She was in having a procedure. She said that during that procedure, she began to feel very uncomfortable. She was sore. She started to cry and asked the surgeon if he could maybe stop for a moment. He seemed to get very annoyed with her. She said that he then turned round and told her to shut up, and at the end of the procedure just took his gloves off and threw them at her. So she was extremely distressed about that. She didn't know who to make a complaint to, so that's why she came to us. As you said, we've also had a lot of anonymous people coming forward just talking about this culture within the Belfast Trust. And other trusts, lots of members of staff who are saying that they are being bullied. They have concerns some are saying within the Belfast Trust with how they're treated by management, that management doesn't have a grip of the situation. Now, with the Department of Health moving into the Belfast Trust to oversee a lot of these issues, I think you are going to start to see even more people coming forward and speaking out. But whether they will be willing to put themselves out there to identify who they are, I don't know.
And there's been a lot of political reaction as well to this. You know, you've been speaking to politicians like Diane Dodds and Colin McGrath. What have they been saying to you? Have they been concerned by what they're hearing?
I think most people couldn't believe when they heard about the details of the report. It was the Tuesday after we broke the report, the MLAs questioned Mike Nesbitt in the Assembly. Now, none of the MLAs at the moment have actually got a copy of this report, but they were aware of the details from our reporting on the Friday, and they were saying they couldn't believe it. They were saying they were absolutely astounded by what was going on within that cardiac surgery unit. They've all been saying they want to see the report. Mike Nesbitt was going to make it available to them, to the Health Committee, but he said that he has to take legal advice first before he actually makes it available to them. And they're all insisting that they really have to see this report, and the public has a right to know exactly what has been going on.
100%. And then, you know, the Health Minister has taken action and he has announced that the Trust is being put into these exceptional measures. What exactly does that mean? You know, for people watching or listening, what does that mean? And crucially, I suppose, you know, is it enough to solve the issue?
Well, it means that he has an external team of people who will be going into the Belfast Trust. They're there to report back to him on just how widespread maybe these cultural issues are throughout the Trust. They will also be there offering advice to management, to personnel, how to deal with all of these issues. It is still very early days, so the Minister is due to meet with the Trust Board at the end of June. He will be wanting to see what sort of progress has been made to address these issues, not just in the cardiac surgery unit, but issues that have been identified elsewhere within the Trust. And if he's not happy with what he is being told, then he says that there are further measures that he could take. Now, what they are, he hasn't specified. Whether what he's doing at the moment will actually fix this problem, I doubt it, because this has been systemic over a number of years, and you're not going to be able to address these issues within just a couple of weeks.
And I suppose, you know, is it just the Belfast Trust we're talking about here? You know, you talk about these issues being systemic. Do you have a sense that this is broader than the Belfast Trust?
Well, the last time I was speaking to Mike Nesbitt, he had said himself that he wouldn't be surprised if there are issues in other trust areas, but he said at the moment he doesn't see that it is quite as widespread or that it is a massive problem at the moment, but he has asked people to come forward and to speak up. And I know that people are contacting that department, they're contacting health committee members almost on a daily basis. So it really is just now at the stage where they're having to look through a lot of these concerns that are being raised from Belfast Trust and from other trusts to see if they are actually legitimate concerns. I mean, I'm guessing the Minister's really hoping that it isn't widespread right across Northern Ireland, because that will be very, very difficult to deal with.
And then finally, you know, you're a hugely experienced journalist. You've been on this health beat for the last few years, and you've really had to get under the skin of some, you know, really distressing, emotional stories. Why do you think this one has sort of, what shocked you about it, and why do you think it's just got the reaction that it has?
I think because it is the cardiac surgery unit. You know, they save lives every single day. The number of operations that they do every year, you know, this is it's a fantastic unit. But the fact that something like this has been going on, if instruments are being thrown well in theatre, you know, if a patient is there, I think it's just because it was the cardiac surgery unit. But then it was also the detail of what was actually happening.
And we rarely get that, don't we?
Yeah, but you think of our doctors, our surgeons, all our medics as being extremely professional people, but yet tempers were frayed within the cardiac surgery unit. And then you also have to wonder, why is this happening? Are they under a lot of stress? Is it too much stress? Is it just personalities? There are just so many questions that this one story has opened, and so it's going to take a long, long time to just get to the heart of exactly what's been happening there and in other parts of the service.
Thank you so much for joining me, Debs, and thank you for your reporting. We'll have more on this on UTV Live and in a special documentary, Shattered Trust on ITVX. That's it from the UTV Vodcast. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and share, and you can always watch us on ITVX. Until next time.